Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over why I personally think Pokémon Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon game on the Switch. Now these comparisons are mostly going to be against Scarlet and Violet because I do think that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Sword and Shield, while being good games, are not really on the same level as they're not really open world. So the main comparisons are going to be between PLA and Scarlet and Violet. Now look, I know I'm not the first trash tier YouTuber to come out with the hot take that Scarlet and Violet suck, they're the worst Pokemon games ever made, boycott Game Freak, and the other kind of rhetoric that's been going around. But these games clearly do have some massive problems that maybe other franchises wouldn't get away with if they released their games in this state. So the performance issues are the main thing, but also the weird open world design that's not really an open world but is an open world. And a few other problems like the promised performance patch that never came. These are some massive issues that really make Scarlet and Violet take a step back, and I think are going to be pretty memorable for people when they're thinking about buying the next game. So despite these issues, Scarlet and Violet still sold over 23 million copies, which is absolutely insane and likely puts it into the upper tier of games sold in history, but that doesn't mean that Game Freak can't do better. The games have been stagnating for a long time, and I personally feel like Scarlet and Violet actually took some steps in the right direction, in spite of the clear issues that it had. They should actually take some of the features from PLA to create the ultimate open world game that the fans have been begging for. Surely this game could become one of the best selling games of all time if they do it right. So in this video, I'm going to break down why I think PLA is the best Pokemon game on the Switch, including the negatives that need to be improved on moving forward, especially with the current rumours going around that Legends Johto, or whatever the sequel is going to be, will potentially be announced during Pokemon Day this year, which will be incredible if true. So first off, let's start with the negatives. So first off, the one major thing I think that's missing from the games are in fact the gym battles. So don't get me wrong, I actually really did like fighting the big bosses in the arena style fights. I do think the first fight against Cleavor is one of the coolest things I've seen in a Pokemon game, and actually gives you the kind of feeling that Pokemon are actually a threat in this world, which has been basically missing since I got stomped by the Elite Four as a kid in Pokemon Yellow, to be honest. So I do hope that these make a return in the sequel, but I really do think that the games do need to go back to having the 8 gyms with actual badges, none of this stupid taking photos and you beat the winner and it's all happy families like was in Scarlet and Violet. I do think gyms back in the original games were such a massive core part of the journey, and so were the gym leaders themselves. Gym leaders back in the original games, things like Misty, Brock, Lieutenant Sarge, Giovanni, these are all iconic people for a reason, and it's not just due to nostalgia. Gyms need to be brought back, and the fights need to be difficult. This is definitely a missing feature of PLA that would have elevated the game. The second major issue I had with PLA was the lack of Pokemon. So obviously we've all seen the backlash and the stories around Dexit and the drama around the release of Sword and Shield, but I do agree with the overall sentiment, to be honest. In PLA there are only 242 Pokemon in the Pokédex, which is way too few, despite actually being a fairly strong list. In the sequel, there needs to be closer to the full dex. I personally believe that every Pokemon game moving forward should have the full roster. It's literally the tagline for the franchise. Gotta catch 'em all. So the last major issue I had with PLA is, and this is largely an issue that's actually only an issue in retrospect, but that's having to switch mounts to perform different actions and abilities. So at the time of the game, I actually thought this was quite good, but this is something that Game Freak has actually fixed in Scarlet and Violet, and I think it was a huge step up on PLA. I do understand that maybe it's a difficult thing to do, seeing as you do need a Pokemon that can do all these things, but even if it's a Pokemon that auto switches between different Pokemon that you can set, that would still be an improvement on the current mount system in PLA. Now let's move on to the positives. I do think this game has so many great features, but the first major positive for me in PLA is the overall art style and sound design. This is a perfect example of graphic fidelity not being everything in a video game, and that art direction and art style still has a massive impact on how the game feels overall. Each of the 5 different zones have a unique style, and they all look great. Even the home base style town looks incredible as it slowly builds up and grows. The water in this game looks great despite it being very heavily art style, very not realistic. Despite this being also a massive pain in the ass to catch Pokemon in, it still looks great. The overall art direction is definitely reinforced by the strong sound design. The Pokemon cries in the open world, the alphas you can hear in the distance, the little detailed sounds of hitting trees and rocks, the sounds of your mount running, everything about the audio design is top tier, and it really makes you feel like you are actually living in that world. This is how it should be in all Pokemon games. The second massive positive for me are the catching mechanics and how Pokemon actually interact with you in the open world. Throwing a Pokeball at a Pokemon has never felt better than it has in this game, and while battling definitely still has its place in the catching mechanics, being able to catch a Pokemon by sneaking up on it just feels right. It makes you feel like you're an actual person in this world trying to survive and catch Pokemon that could actually do some harm towards you and your team. The catching mechanics are improved on even further when you take into consideration that a Pokemon can actually attack you outside of a Pokemon battle, which adds an extra element of stress and difficulty to each encounter you have with a Pokemon. This also shows off how Pokemon are actually dangerous animals in the world that can cause harm rather than something to just destroy you with your over-leveled defender/slave. The next positive is something that you all knew was going to be coming on this list if you'd ever seen a video of ours before, and that's shiny hunting. This is my absolute favourite thing about Pokemon. I love hunting those rare, slightly different coloured Pokemon that have no other benefit but being able to flex on people in raids in Scarlet and Violet, and PLA is the best game to ever do it. The way they spawn, the sound, and the graphic effects are crazy fun, and it keeps you listening to the game at all times, just in case that sound pops up and you go into full panic mode trying to get your new rare teammate. I do think that Scarlet and Violet took a step back in this regard. Not having a shiny indicator in the open world was a huge step back that left the community pretty frustrated. Also, the fact that you can just run back and forth until a shiny spawns is definitely starting to make shiny hunting way too easy. I have over 150 different shiny Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, and that's just way too many. It does make it feel a lot less special when you can get them so easily. One thing that has also been raised is the fact that without a shiny indicator, people that do not have full colour vision, or people that do not have full eyesight, really struggle to see if a Pokemon is shiny, and as there's no indicator, it kind of ruins this for them. Alphas and proper size variation are also something that's incredibly fun in PLA. Finding a giant shiny Shinx is something that you will never experience in another game, and it definitely adds something extra into the world of PLA. Another positive that I see that's not mentioned as much, but that's the actual world itself and its design. It's so well designed because it's smaller than Scarlet and Violet, and it makes it feel like each region is actually a different part of the same world. In Scarlet and Violet, the map does just feel like a bunch of different areas thrown together. This also isn't an actual fire area, which I found was really odd. Each location in PLA feels unique and adds value to the game, and makes you actually want to go to each different region to see what's different as you progress through the game. This doesn't happen in Scarlet and Violet, as everything looks very similar, and there's only a few sections towards the north of the map that actually feel different from the rest of it. This is incredibly boring design, and this is what makes it feel like it's a PS2 game. This is the final reason why I think PLA is a better game than Scarlet and Violet, and that is, it actually runs. The game actually performs fairly well as good as it can on the Switch's old ass hardware, especially compared to the shocking performance that Scarlet and Violet still has to this day. The promise of the performance patch that never came, the absolute stuttering during the game, the crashes, all the bugs, things going through, you would have seen arms through faces, all these terrifying things. This is not how a game can release, not the biggest media franchise in the world. They definitely need to fix this, and hopefully PLA can continue the trend of being a good performing game on the Switch. So that's it for now, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What's your favourite part of both games? And please let me know if you disagree with me. I'm always interested to hear the opinions of others. If you like the video, please leave us a like, as it really helps the channel out, and subscribe if you enjoy our content. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.